You know, obviously it's very disturbing, and it does have an impact on officers. Let me just say this, law enforcement over the past 35 years has changed dramatically. Not that it was safe, a safe profession, but it's much more dangerous now. Officers are exposed to firearms more often and violence more often. But, you know, in the city of Fort Wayne, I have got to give credit to our administration and our academy. We work constantly on situational awareness with officers, not only when they're in the academy, but also when they go back to in-service. Really to train them about their surroundings and how they have to be so very aware of, you know, where people's hands are, or, you know, people approaching them. And, you know, that causes us a little bit of conflict, because sometimes we get complaints that officers are a little standoffish. That officers, you know, I saw an officer people say in the back of a business doing a report. Why isn't that person out in the public eye, you know, so they could be a deterrent to crime? Well, you know, quite frankly, officers go into secluded spots to write a report because their attention is focused on that, and they worry about somebody approaching them and doing them harm. So, you know, we get complaints sometimes from people who say, why is it that when you stop a car, you have to have 2 squad cars there? Well, officers take care of each other that way. Most of our officers ride solo, so another officer's there to help them out. You know, I will do that on the way home from work if there's a state officer or a county officer even with a traffic stop, just to stop by to make sure that they're okay. So those are some of the things that officers do to help keep themselves safe. You know, when officers are walking up to cars, you know, they're trained that someone's hands can kill them. And so if they don't see the hands on the steering wheel, or if somebody is in a glove box, or if their hands are under a seat, you know, that's going to make them very aware of a possible hazard. So, you know, we encourage people, if they are stopped, keep their hands in plain view on the steering wheel. The life of a police officer has changed dramatically over the past 30 years, and our officers are trained much more appropriately in survival, and also, as I mentioned, situational awareness. It serves as a very tragic reminder to active officers that you just have to be aware constantly. No matter where you're at, you just have to be so very aware of your surroundings and the individuals around you. I have to say it's just very disturbing. But not that any of us are totally prepared when that happens, but you know, keep in mind when officers go to work each day, they put body armor on because they're very aware of the threat that exists out there. And you know, that's part of their training and retraining, and it's always at the back of their minds. It's a tough job. You want to be courteous and very professional, and you have to weigh that with keeping yourself safe. In a situation that doesn't feel right, officers are trained to protect themselves, to keep themselves safe, to maybe be a little aloof while they're trying to assess the situation, because that's their main concern. You know, they want to go home tonight. I'm very proud of how we train. I can't think of anything we could do more as far as preparing officers for what they'll encounter on the street. It serves as a very tragic reminder that that threat exists out there. I just got a report from the FBI that lists officers killed feloniously since January. It went from January 1st through September 1st, and so far we've had 26 officers killed nationally. The same time last year we had 32. So our focus is drawn by the recent rash, and two, you have to look at the circumstances. What's changed a little bit, or a lot this year, it seems, is the focus on somebody determined to take a police officer's life just because they're a police officer. We just try to prepare these young officers coming onto the street and our veteran officers for what's out there. We've got a great training program. Our officers are trained in the latest trends in law enforcement in protecting themselves. So we feel comfortable that they're prepared. And this automatically just, if any officer would be getting a little complacent, this is again just a reminder that you have to be alert, you know, when you're out there. And, you know, keep in mind, our officers, we have a home fleet program, so even when they're off duty, they're in a squad car. So, you know, they have to be aware then too. You know, anytime they're in, I mean, they're in that squad car, people know they're a police officer even if they're not patrolling. It's really evolved. I can't say that it's changed so much. It's continually evolving, and that's the job of our training staff. They, you know, at every opportunity we expose them to new practices and you know, what the best practices are out there. And so we're sending them to get trained in whatever's new and effective, and they then make sure that our troops are trained in that. So it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. And have we introduced new trainings to our officers this year? I'm sure we have. You know, it's 3 times a year our officers have to go for 8 hours for in-service training, and they're always exposed to, it's just not, you know, shooting their firearm, although they have to qualify 4 times a year, but it's defensive tactics, how to protect themselves, it's traffic stops, it's how to appropriately drive an emergency vehicle and protect themselves. So it's a lot of different topics that we cover every year. You know, what we already have in place is our, you know, neighborhood liaison officers who touch base with their neighborhoods on a regular basis, our regional, our neighborhood chairs, our area partnership meetings once a month where, you know, in each of our 4 quadrants we get together with the folks there. But it's our bike officers, it's our SROs that are out there in the classrooms. And, you know, we always encourage officers to get out when they get a chance to walk the neighborhoods. So it's a number of things that we look at to engage the community. And again, it's that balance between an officer protecting himself or herself, but also being accessible and very approachable. It's a tough job. It's a tough job for officers. The toughest thing to learn when I address graduating classes, that's the toughest thing, you know, to protect yourself but also be so professional and courteous and know, and you can't always, they're not mind readers, you know, what presents a threat and what doesn't, but they really key off actions of a person they stop or a person they encounter. That's why we have our CIT program, you know, crisis intervention team dealing with the mentally ill, to know how different mental illnesses exhibit themselves so they can tell if this person indeed is violent or experiencing a crisis. We do that with different medical issues too, whether somebody is intoxicated or suffering from a diabetic issue. You know, we work on that constantly to try to help officers determine when they're exposed to a threat and when they're not. You know, officers, it's a tough job, and I often get the question, has what has been going on nationally affected recruitment? And I can honestly say it hasn't, because we've got young people that want to enter into the profession of law enforcement for all the right reasons. They want to make a difference in their community, they want to help people. But I want to let people know that I came on in 1975. It's a much different job today in 2015 than it was back then. Officers are responsible for many additional duties, many additional responsibilities, and it's a much more dangerous occupation than it has ever been. in the history of law enforcement. So it's a challenging job, and you know, people are quick to point the finger at police, but we're also asked to solve many of the ills of our society that we're not responsible for, but we've become, you know, the point people for that. So it's a tough job, and we've, you know, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we've got a terrific police department. I'm very proud of them, and when I read the reports every day, which I do, I'm so impressed by not only their restraint, but also their courage. They do a great job.